everyone, my name is The Clever Fool. Today I'll be playing a custom scenario created by a user called NekyChoi, titled, the series is titled The Imjin War. Today's campaign is titled The Day of Doom. It features the Korean civilization, and I believe we are fighting against the Japanese. It's translated from a foreign language, I believe, as well, so I will probably end up paraphrasing some of the translation if the translation's not perfect. But let's go ahead and get started. I'm super excited to see what this brings. In 1592, Joseon of Korea got under a dark cloud. Toyotomi Hideyoshi, who finished the warring period of Japan, couldn't stop his desire for conquest. He wanted to have Joseon and even Ming of China. So, Toyotomi asked Joseon to lend a way for Ming to make a campaign. Joseon, however, didn't allow it, as Joseon was a tributary country of Ming. As a result, Toyotomi decided to forcibly go into China via attacking Joseon. Millions of Japanese troops were sent to the Korean peninsula with generals like Konishi Yukinaga, Kato Kiyomasa. The closest land from Japan was Busan. They had to fight against Busan fortresses. However, Joseon had been so peaceful for hundreds of years that most people weren't trained properly and didn't even know how to fight. Because of this, the Japanese were able to easily conquer many fortresses in Busan. They reached Dongye Fortress, a place deep in Busan. It was a significant base protecting the southeast of Joseon. Japanese could get much deeper into Joseon if they captured it. Song Sang-yeon, the manager of Dongye, commander, gathered his troops and prepared for battle. Okay, so our main objectives are to prevent the wonder from Dongye Fortress from being destroyed. We defend it for an hour, and to defeat the Japanese blockers within that hour. Our secondary objectives are to get extra resources by getting ox carts outside of the fortress into the area with the wonder. Seems like we can get them by scouting out. Our hits tell us that our population limit is 200 and we can reach the Imperial Age. However, we can't build walls, gates, or castles, so we have to protect the base, our own base, and our allies' base. We can't win this scenario even if we keep the wonder, unless we defeat the Japanese blockers. So we have to defeat Orange. We have to. Resources in the fortress are scarce. All other affordable materials are outside the fortress. You can find ox carts or some spots that you can plunder near each map revealer. However, always be aware of enemies when you do something outside. The enemies surpass you in both supply and quantity. It's not recommended to try to conquer them. Your defense can be fortified with towers that shoot arrows with archers inside. You can fortify your defenses with archers in your towers, basically. And onagers and siege onagers are very effective against infantry units coming to you. Got it. Your scouts report that the Joseon force in blue, led by Song Sang-yeon, the commander of Dongye, is prepared to fight against the invasion of the Japanese. We have to counter their invasion with constant management of our military conditions. Our Joseon force in green will fight against them with mainly swordsmen, spearmen, heavy cavalry, cavalry archers, and skirmishers. Though resources in this fortress are scarce, we can find some remnants left by our people. If we take them safely into the fortress and avoid the enemy's sight, it may help us a little bit. Although we protest harshly against them, it must be captured sooner or later. I have no idea what that means. We must make a path for our evacuation before it comes. What is it? I guess it's before... I don't know. However, they're the Japanese blockers on the only available way. We have at least to defeat them. Okay, so that paragraph, I can only interpret that as we have to defeat the Japanese blockers in order to escape. The Japanese troops in purple around this fortress take abundant supply and are massive, so there's no defeating them, basically. They will attack with swordsmen, skirmishers, samurai, rams, and scorpions, mainly. Okay, so onagers are going to be really good against these guys. The leader of our enemies is Konishi Yukinaga in yellow. His troops are known for being the best technique, so they're the strongest, and they consist of swordsmen, archers, hand cannoneers, samurai, rams, and onagers. Especially their trebuchets are notorious for formidable transformation speed, so katapuro. Katapuruto or something like that? Which literally just means catapult in Japanese, I believe. Okay, so this is the first level of the Imjin War custom scenario, and it is a defense mission. A pretty difficult defense mission at that. You will quickly come under a lot of pressure from both Purple, the Japanese force, as well as Konishi Yukinaga in yellow. Now, right away what I'm doing is I am booming up as fast as I can, researching some vital eco-techs, turning out villagers where I can, garrisoning my existing crossbowmen into some of the towers around the base, as well as sending my contingent of knights to grab some ox carts that are going to provide us with some much needed resources early on. I'm also training a monk in the hopes of grabbing a relic here and there, and setting up a base north of our actual fortress here. That little cubby of woods is good for farming because it's a little bit open and the opponents are not super interested in actually attacking that area, so long as you don't reveal it. As you can see here, our knights have discovered the first ox cart and we are sending it back to our base, which will give us a bunch of resources. We're sending our light cavalry down southwards to find another ox cart. Getting as many of these ox carts as possible early on is very vital for you to get production going, especially in this brief period of time where you won't actually come under attack from either yellow or purple. Another thing that we have to note is that we have to clear out the Japanese blockers in orange. They are a static force with a few patrolling squads in the northwest of the map. We'll take care of them in due time. You don't actually have to destroy all of their towers. You only need to destroy their military units. So that's just something to note in case you are struggling. Now, the bulk of the enemy's attacks will actually come from all directions, but the strongest form will be across the eastern bridge from Konishi Yukinaga. He will send lots of rams, lots of trebuchets, even some onagers, I believe. And his military consists of a lot of very diverse units such as samurai, elite skirmishers, and things like that. He's a very, very difficult opponent to contend with. You have to make sure that you hold the eastern front as long as you can so that your base is protected here. So our ox cart here has arrived, which is great. We're still picking up eco-techs wherever we're able to. We just found our third ox cart with our squad of knights, and we are trying to bring them back. Here we also discover some reinforcements, a couple of trebuchets, which will be kind of useful for clearing out the blockers and for defensive purposes, as well as a squad of cataphracts, which are pretty good against enemy infantry. As you can see here now, we are advancing to the Imperial Age with the resources that we've captured, and we're still strengthening our food eco wherever we can. In the bottom left there, you can see that Konishi Yukinaga actually has a cache of resources that we will soon head over to destroy. Don't ask me why his cache is so close to our base and far away from his base. I didn't ask the man why he decided to place the units where he placed. In any case, now is the time where I'm starting to build towers. Koreans have very good towers, and having a bunch of towers in the same place amplifies their protection of that location. And here you go, we're going for the supply depots. The Joseon force will actually be pretty helpful initially. They have reasonable forces stacked around the base, and they will act as a good defensive blocker this entire time. It's pretty interesting that you have an ally to help you out in this scenario. They are of pretty reasonably good use. It helps you from having to micro over much. There's lots of food in this northern area, both in the form of open areas for farms, but also deers and boars, as you can see. Now later on in this scenario, we're going to be stockpiling a bunch of food. Food is good for training light cavalry, or hussars. Unfortunately, Korean hussars are not very good. I believe they lack both blast furnace and the last cavalry armor tech, so they're pretty poor in terms of hussars when compared against other civilizations, unfortunately. But the upshot is that they only cost food, and so if you're farming a lot, then you can keep churning them out. Another upside of hussars is that they are fast, so you can run them around to snipe siege weapons, and they're relatively expendable as well. I sent a scout eastward at this point to grab yet another ox cart. Keep in mind that there are 5 total, and each one of them gets us resources. We also need to make sure to remember to research conscription, as we only get the 1 castle, and produce war wagons when we can. Bundled up war wagons are super tanky, and they make excellent moving, I guess, defensive artillery, so to speak. Siege onagers will also come in super handy. They can flatten a lot of units on the bridge. They can also flatten rams from range in particular, and they are very good at crushing swaths of grouped up units. Now here we have one of the 2 fortified towers destroyed. Once you destroy it, a new one springs up in its place. I believe if you destroy both of them, the towers actually become much stronger than a standard keep. But I don't think I actually managed to destroy both of them during this scenario. It's nice to have them as an extra line of defense, but you do need to keep melee units near them if you intend to use them, because otherwise purple will eventually send rams to destroy them. If you can manage to protect them though, they're quite good against standard units and can 1 or 2 shot them. So it's quite good to protect them if you can. We notice here that we've grabbed a couple of relics. There's a relic atop the cliffs where you find the cataphracts, and there's also a relic in between the woods inside your base that you start off with. Green might capture that relic. I usually don't really mind if green captures the relic in the fortress itself, but other than that, you can get gold from other places. It's really interesting that you can sneak your villagers out. If you can get villagers outside of the base, they typically won't actually come under attack from purple or yellow. They are pretty focused on assaulting your base from the front. So if I can manage to sneak villagers out onto the external gold and stone mines like I'm doing right now, then they are usually free to actually just mine to their heart's content. This is really important because you need lots of gold and lots of stone to continue producing your defensive siege weapons, war wagons, and build towers here. Another really important thing to note is that you can repair your allies' castles, but you cannot rebuild castles of your own. So it's really, really important that if you let their castle go down, that you at least build some towers up to replace them. Fortunately, this time for this assault, I did not let the castle fall, and I have my villagers repairing them dutifully. I'm trying to build more villagers and more farms, just to make sure that my food influx is always solid. I have plenty of wood in the bank already still. I think a mistake that players sometimes make when they play this level is trying to destroy the Japanese blockers preemptively. You don't need to go after them right away. You should try to clear them out when before the attacks get too heavy, but also when your forces are strong. There will be a window of opportunity where you can spare some forces to leave the base and take care of orange. Now on the mini-map there, you can see on the right side, I have a town center up, and I also have stone miners on the left side that the purple dots are just moving right past. Those are stone miners that the enemy is just ignoring. Again, it is of the utmost importance that you keep the rams from doing too much damage to your base. And you keep churning out population so that you're population capped. Being at your population cap is an indication that you are doing well. If you're not at your population cap, you can always be getting more villagers or military on the field. My spare villagers will make it over there eventually to the stone line. They might not be able to right away, but they will eventually. And now I'm using my squad of war wagons to clear out Purple's presence from the west and moving my trebuchets to bombard down the towers so that I can start making progress against the Japanese blockers. Trying to farm up the resources to upgrade to Hussar, as well as to upgrade to Siege Onager. Both of those techs are pretty valuable. And in the west corner of the map there, we have discovered the last ox cart, as well as a mining camp with gold. As you can see there, my stone miners are still dutifully mining away. And here is the next wave of attackers. We did lose a good chunk of wagons, but fortunately they are beefy enough that we still have a nice critical mass. Notice that I have war wagons queued up at our one singular castle. I pretty much always want to be producing those if I can afford them. And these villagers outside in the east are getting us tons and tons of gold. They're really keeping us in the game right now. At this point, I'm thinking of spending my extra wood on stables outside so that I can produce hussars more quickly if I need to. I know that the right side will have trebuchets and tons of siege coming in as time goes on. So I want to be able to replenish my forces quickly from that angle. There we go. Onagers, trebuchets, rams, all sorts of enemies coming over. I actually lose the castle to this bunch of trebuchets while I wasn't careful. So I'm rebuilding towers in its place. I kind of wish that the allies would produce war wagons, but it doesn't seem like that they're interested in doing that. And here I'm just luring Orange's forces back into my castle so that I minimize losses of my war wagons. It's important to make sure that you're grabbing as much stone as possible. There's like a stone pocket in the north of the map. There's a stone pocket in the southwest of your fortress. There's that stone mine in the very southwest of the map. There's lots and lots of stone to grab around, and you want to grab as much as you can so that you can build as many towers as you can. I personally favor keeps because they can fire quickly. Bombard towers are decent, but if they're too busy hitting rams, they're actually pretty inefficient. They're also kind of expensive. They cost lots of gold as well, in addition to stone, instead of just wood and stone. Japanese blockers have longbowmen on their side. Wow. There we are, picking up the Onager upgrade, since we have lots of units queued, and we have the spare resources. And that's the blockers destroyed. Now that the blockers are out of the way, our primary focus is just to survive. For some reason, having cleared the blockers, we still need to stay for the remaining 30 minutes of the mission. I don't really understand that from a gameplay perspective, but I guess it's okay. If you're still at your population cap at this point in the level, you're doing pretty good. The enemy attacks will start to gain in intensity until you do start feeling pretty overwhelmed. So the best thing to do is to just continue gathering stone and building towers wherever you can preemptively. It's actually incredible that I never finished researching the gold mining shaft, the gold shaft mining tech. That slowed down my gold income pretty significantly.
준비. 저요? 이동. 나무꾼.
저요? 준비 이동. 사냥꾼. 대기. 목수.
Now we're just building a monastery to capture that extra relic. Any extra gold income is welcome. There's also a gold mine near where the Japanese blockers were. You have to destroy some of their towers in order to make it safe for villagers to mine there, but I highly recommend mining there as well. Any extra gold that you can get outside of the walls is good gold.
준비. 목수.
저요? 실시. 목수. 예? 대기. 예. 목수.
The important thing about building lots of buildings as well is that it distracts the enemy siege from your more valuable buildings like the castles. That Treb is trebbing down on my towers. That's all well and good. I can rebuild the towers, but I cannot rebuild the castles.
방부.
저요? 나무꾼.
준비.
그렇지. 알았지. 준비.
예? 채직꾼. 준비. 목수.
예?
Now, if you were a better player, you would protect the western gold mine there a little bit better. That's where pretty much half of my gold income is coming from at this point, so you really need to dedicate some defense to that. Instead, I'm kind of just chilling inside my base here. My population is still relatively high, so I'm not super worried. But another wave of attackers is now starting to stream in. Fire towers are also surprisingly good against rams because they attack really frequently, like their rate of fire is really high. So it might be good to try to mix in some of those. They are a custom tower that you can build in this mission only. I like the mission a lot overall. I think the difficulty level is quite high. It is probably the hardest mission out of all of the Imjin war missions. I'm doing this post-commentary having done all 5 of the other remaining missions live, so to speak. So when I first played this, I had really high expectations in terms of difficulty level of the remaining missions. I think it was intended to be a little bit easier than it currently is, and that's because it was created on a different AI. I believe maybe one of DE's AI patches actually made the AI in this map a bit more aggressive, especially on the east side. You can see that it's under a lot of pressure now. I need to dedicate some cavalry to get over there as soon as possible. And there's even a trebuchet on the west line here. The important thing is to not get flustered and to just always make sure that you are doing something productive with your attention. Sometimes when I get a little bit overwhelmed in this game, I kind of just start watching the chaos unfold, but it's actually in those moments where it's the most critical for you to be mentally aware and doing useful actions. The problem here now is I'm actually running pretty low on resources, especially food. If my food income is disrupted, then my army will not be able to get sustained here. A lot of my army is just hussars at this point. And remember, our hussars, the Korean hussars, are not very strong. We still need to hold up for 20 in-game minutes. I'm microing my hussars there to take down the trebuchets. I let them run amok for far too long, but thankfully there's another line of towers already back. I still have 1,800 stone, so I should be spamming even more towers, which I am starting to do now.
대기.
준비해.
Still don't have murder holes, which is just bananas, but really, with so many towers clustered close together, there's no huge need for murder holes. Not picking up arrow slits earlier was a mistake, though. Our towers could have been much stronger than they have been.
저요. 준비. 예, 나무꾼.
And now you can even see that I am low on wood because I'm producing onagers and war wagons. Fortunately for us, the west side is holding strong. And we only have 17 more in-game minutes to worry about.
예, 대기. 그러죠. 나무꾼.
Now our west side is actually pretty sparse, and just like that, you can see that my population has dropped from 200 full to just down to 165 in close to the blink of an eye. This is really not good, especially considering that we're not even floating very much food at this point. All of a sudden, things went from pretty good to very, very sketchy.
목수.
저요. 이동.
We even have villagers just going all in on this ram here.
광부.
대기. 예,
But this mission is all about gathering as many resources as you can and then spending them. That's a very, very vital point. You gotta spend the resources, otherwise your enemy will just build more units and overwhelm you. At some point I even lost the monastery in the town center in the right side of the map. You can see in the mini-map that their icons are no longer there. I don't even know when they got destroyed. I don't think I noticed.
준비. 실시. 목수.
대기. 목수.
We have 13 minutes to go. Things are still looking very nasty. We just rebuilt this town center, so we just got our gold miners back online. But we're losing a lot of our war wagons. I should have been churning out more here, and I think I noticed that. Luckily, we have a block of siege onagers still alive. And green is still fighting valiantly on our behalf. Instead of wasting my time fighting samurai, I'm retasking what few hussars remain to sniping down siege. At this point, raw building HP is also something to consider. Any rock that is thrown at something that's not the wonder is a rock that's thrown at something that's not the wonder.
나무꾼.
All we have to do is keep the wonder from collapsing. We've already cleared out the path to evacuate, so really, if desperate times call for truly desperate measures, then we can sacrifice the entirety of the remainder of our base. I have that one brave villager valiantly trying to spend the rest of our stone to build towers. I should have more villagers dedicated to building those towers. But things are looking super hairy now on the east side. Really what I need to do with what remains of my army is snipe these siege weapons. You really gotta be diligent about doing that.
예, 이동.
예, 광부.
준비. 광부.
준비. 광부. 저요?
Gold isn't even our limiting resource at this point. It's really the food and the wood. But we only need to survive for 8 more in-game minutes. So at this point I'm already feeling pretty decent. I know that there's probably 1 more or 2 more major assaults left. So I'm still on my toes. I'm currently in really bad shape. I only have 128 pop out of my 200 pop left. So I'm definitely losing steam here.
대기. 목수.
But overall, this is a very fun mission. It was quite difficult. I had to try this a couple of times in order to really figure out what the best strategy was to grab the early resources, what team comp to use for my army. I think the Hussar Siege Onager War Wagon combination ended up working pretty well. You can even see that some of these stables have been taken out, which is actually kind of good, because we're not able to produce hussars as fast anymore, so those stables operate better as cannon fodder, so to speak. I lost all those gold miners on the left side, but I still have the 4 in the very west corner of the map. We're probably not going to be able to use all of the remaining gold that we have before the timer runs out. So they've done their job and there's no need to replenish. At this point things are looking very good. Even though we're starting to get overwhelmed here, there's still plenty of things to destroy before the Wonder comes under direct fire. And that's a really good sign. I think this is a good chance to, as we wind down here, it's a good chance to talk about my thoughts on the campaign as a whole. I do think this was a very good representation of the power of the Korean civilization and what it can do. There were a lot of unique concepts executed throughout this campaign as well. Some of them worked, some of them didn't quite work as well. This is definitely a campaign where it shows that it's not an official campaign, but for the level of a custom campaign, it's pretty excellent. It was a very enjoyable experience, and showcasing a pivotal moment in Korean history is also extremely cool. The levels are diverse, they showcase the civilization well, and they are engaging enough to keep my attention the entire time. So really overall I'd highly recommend giving this one a play if you are a fan of single player Age of Empires. Some improvements, I could say that maybe get some better English translation of the files. To improve the experience for English players. That's just a little bit of bias on my side, of course, because I am an English player. But also some rebalancing of certain objectives and making sure that the player is not able to break or cheese the mission in certain ways for the other missions would be nice. That being said, I don't have too many complaints about this first level. It truly is quite a slogfest in terms of stuff to do, and there's a lot of combat in it. Desperate defensive combat, which is honestly a kind of combat that you don't see very often in Age of Empires 2.
농부.
And there we go. Victory is ours. Whew, sheesh. Yeah, this is a doozy. This is a really tough one. I'll talk about it in post commentary. Dongye Fortress was conquered only within 2 hours. Japanese troops acquired a way deeper into Joseon so easily. People in the fortress resisted desperately. Some of them were throwing tiles to enemies off the roof. However, numerous people in the fortress were slaughtered, and their bodies were buried in the moat. The moat was filled with them. Song Sang-yeon also died while resisting against the enemies. This horrible scene was buried under the ground. Later, if someone uncovered this remains, they would lose their words. I would be open to honestly just improving this translation to like more conventional English. It would be a translation off of what I see here, the English version. But I could probably like word it a little bit more flavorfully if you'd like. But yeah, that was fun. There's just so much to pay attention to. Priest with a relic back here. Which ox cart did we not bring back? I guess it doesn't really matter. I think we must have lost one of the ox carts. But yeah, wow. That was wild. A great showcase of a lot of things that make the Koreans strong. Their walls, their towers, their war wagons, their onagers. In post-imp. Super, super fun. I'd say it's not the cleanest scenario in the world, but it's certainly super incredibly fun overall. Cheers for creating this one, and it's quite difficult too. It's really hard. I failed this 2 or 3 times before I was able to get the hang of it. The first time I didn't expect it to be so difficult, and subsequent times I kind of realized there were some focal points that you want to position your build around in order to properly defend, so to speak. But yeah, like the incoming waves they just never stop. They just are always coming with more rams and onagers and trebuchets. It's really, really crazy what you have to do just to stay alive in this scenario. Definitely seems like attacks from the west are not as strong as the attacks from the east. I'd say there'd even be potential to destroy this base up here. But not the rest of these. In the end, most of our villagers died too. All the ones inside this base. The ones outside the city managed to survive though. In fact, that was propping up our economy mostly. Alright, cool. Well, Thanks for watching. That was the Imjin War, Mission 1, the Day of Doom. Hope you guys enjoy this. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.